I would be remiss if I did not remind you folks that we are broadcasting from Watertown, Massachusetts, which is just outside Boston, and last night's game against the Cardinals was not too pretty. Oh well, we will prevail. One other thing, and that is today the church celebrates the funeral of one of the finest priests in the Archdiocese that I know, Father Mark John Hannon. And I just want to take but a moment to say how very blessed I was to know him. He was a man of 6 feet tall. He was larger than life. He was filled with joy. He was filled with God's love in such a very deep and abiding way. He had no problem to take those who were almost as tall as him, that's me, and throw his arm around me and give me a hug and say, "Jack, how you doing today?" More so if I was having not such a great day. He always brought light into your light. He brought Jesus' light into your light. I did a funeral one day for a concelebrated funeral up in Alston from where I'm originally from, and I'm down in Marshfield, so it was about a 2-hour drive to get up there in the morning. But I grew up with this family, and I had great respect for the father, who was a deputy fire chief, and realized I needed to get up there to go and see, to be there. And so I got up there. Now, Father Hannon, who was in a couple parishes over, who just recently had them as parishioners for 3 years, he was up there as well. He was always at priest funerals. He was always at funerals outside the parish for related family members. He really was an inspiration to all the priests in the Archdiocese of Boston. So I'm so happy for him that I pray now he enjoys God's kingdom. I ask you to pray for his parish family in St. Joe's and Hanson, as well as his immediate family. The grief that they experience today is beyond our understanding or our measure, but we do know in faith that Christ Jesus, who consoles all, will bring consolation to them and bring healing to them. And it should be some great measure of great comfort and hope to all of us that one day we will be with him, I believe, in God's kingdom in heaven. Today's first reading is from Paul, and I think it is very, very realistic. And I somehow think, as I was reading it a couple of days ago, I was thinking about Pope Francis. And what a beautiful pope he is, and how he's bringing across a message of love and forgiveness, and how he's also bringing across one of the gospel values, and that's Jesus telling us, not to judge one another, but to bring healing, to help. Like Father Mark Hannon, who lived a good and holy life, who loved being with people, who loved being a priest, who loved to pray, who loved to help people. What a great example. That, I think, is what Pope Francis is talking to us about. The first reading almost, I thought was so beautiful, because as I read it, it was like I was reading something that could have been out of my own diary if I kept one. And that was about how sinful I am. I know sometimes I really, really hop on those sins. And my oblate friends who hear my confessions in the Prudential Center, God bless them, they got great patience. And they also have good counsel. And one of the greatest gifts they give me is Christ's healing. And they remind me to stop being so hard on myself. And they don't tell me to ignore the sins. They don't never say that. We discuss them. One of them is that there's an occasion when I'm supposed to doing the prayer, the universal prayer of the church, the liturgy of the hours. And sometimes at nighttime, I get so tired, I can't pick it up, and I don't. But yet it's my obligation. And to not do it is a sin. And I'll tell you, when I go to bed, I beat myself up on it. Now, mind you, I don't get out of bed and read it, which would probably be the smarter thing to do. No, I still try to sleep. But Paul's going inside to say that in each one of us individuals, we're sinful people. We were born with sin. Wasn't that why we were baptized? But then he balances it by saying, yes, remember, every day of our lives, we are going to have sins inside our lives. Most of us don't want that inside our lives. We want to be aware of what those sins are, but we don't want to obscure the fact that Jesus came down to save us from our sins, and that he's giving us to this very day and this very moment his grace, sacramental grace in the Eucharist, which we receive, actual grace, which we receive inside prayers. But it is the very invisible power of God that he sends into each one of our lives to do good things, to love our brothers and sisters. How radical it is for Francis to say, I want you to focus on feeding the poor. I want you to focus on taking care of the needy. I want you to focus on the people in the 10 cities inside the United States. I want you to focus on those who don't have jobs. I want you to focus on those who can't make their rent. I want you to really join and work on this. Start one of those St. Vincent de Paul's and societies in your parish if you don't have one. Continue to contribute it. Our life is a balance of living out virtue so we don't commit those sins as much. But it's also about living out virtue in charitable and in good and loving ways. That's what God calls us to. So let's together try to balance our lives. Yes, we don't want to be so scrupulous that we focus on all the sinfulness and forget the call to charity and the goodness and the virtue. We want to balance those things out so we truly are the loving people that God calls us to be.